Hey there, guys. If you could just type a comment, just so I see the. Okay. Hey, Casey. Um, Sound check. Sound is good. Let me know. How's the sound, you guys? Sounds good. Emily says sound is good. I'm just going to wait a couple more minutes while some people are still getting in here. Our regulars. Hey, Jackie. While we're waiting, last week we talked about message work. We talked about cycles that we go through with our mediumship development. Hey Jill, hey Tammy, hey Elizabeth, have any questions come up for you since last week? So any questions before we start into this week, which is going to be focusing, we're going to be doing some more with spirit guides, and we're going to be talking about being an instrument. Okay, so no questions. If you do, don't be afraid to bring them up. Remember that this is with the Facebook Live, the comments only show so much. So the more concise you can be with the question, chances are it's not going to get cut off. Jill says, after an off period, how to get my groove back with readings. That's part of the cycle. So I talked about how I've been sick and my body's been kind of run down and I've been very fatigued, and how it's had a big impact on not being able to focus on my mediumship. And I think some people were confused last week when I said I was taking a step back. I'm not taking a step back from readings. Specifically, I'm taking a step back from spirit communication until I get back to where I need to be. And sometimes that's just the way it is. It's part of the growing pains. It's part of the cycles. When we were looking at Morningstar's cycles of development, you know, there's the expansion period, there's the rest, there's sort of declining, plateauing, and then sort of feeling like it's moving backwards. And so for me, I know that working psychically is always very easy. Working mediumistically, especially after I've had the flu 3 times, I found that the power, you know, we talk a lot about power, the power was gone. So normally there would be an atmosphere around me when I would work, and when I would attempt any sort of spirit communication, that atmosphere wasn't there. What's shifting for me now is that there's an atmosphere there, and I'm getting information. It's just not quite making sense for the sitters. So I know it's just sort of this natural progression, and so I'm just referring people until I'm sort of back to where I need to be. So it's just sort of this natural progression. I'm sure that it'll start being more locked in and more refined and more focused, and usually after that period of contraction and we move back into that expansion, we're better than we were before. But sometimes that backward, you know, sort of that retrograde-esque energy is necessary for us to sort of stop and reevaluate and go through new conditions and new ways of working, and possibly looking at habits or stylistic ruts that we've developed and how to get around those in order to be an effective medium. So it's frustrating because I know right now in my own mediumship, I'm absolutely frustrated going from someone who could for most of my professional period connect with dead people fairly easily, and now it being difficult, it's sort of a confidence shaker, but it's just something that we have to be honest about and hit head on. And just sometimes rest is necessary, and I think sometimes learning to work through it is necessary, and attempting, even when it's not working. I think a habit that some people have is that we tend to give up too soon, and even if it's not working, as long as you're getting perceptions, the act of doing that is sort of pushing through, pushing through, pushing through. So I wanted to start with a brief meditation, being that the intention, yes, it's a class, so to speak, and yes, it's learning, but I wanted it to have sort of a circle-esque quality because we talked about the importance of the circle last week. And part, or the major aspect of what a circle does, is it provides group energy and group power to be built and developed and unfolded. And so even though we may not all physically be in the same room together, this live stream is sort of our link to each other. So I want to do a brief little sort of harmonizing, connecting meditation for power, for all of us. So, as long as you are in a position where it's safe to do so, I want you to just get comfortable. Relax, close your eyes. And as always, we start with our breath, so taking some slow, deep breaths in through the nose. Exhaling through the mouth. Just really allowing yourself to be present. Setting our intention to link with spirit, to link with that divine source energy. And as you breathe, I want you to think about when you experience the emotion of love, especially that of unconditional love or joy, where you feel that in your body. And try to call up a memory of that experience. And I want you to let your consciousness drift to where you feel that in your body. And if you have that visual aspect to your perceptions, I want you to see that divine spark that exists within you in this place that is your center. And every breath you take feeds that flame, feeds that divine essence. And you can see or feel or perceive or conceptualize in whatever way that you do that divine energy, that divine spark that exists within you getting brighter, larger, warmer, beginning to expand and fill your body. And as that energy expands, I want you to consider the earth beneath your feet. The earth which provides all that we have and all that we need. And with your breath, I want you to intend or visualize that you're drawing some of that earth energy up through your legs and into your body, so that some of that earth energy mixes with that divine essence within you. And I want you to perceive that higher source, the God of your understanding above you, as a brilliant diamond white light. And with your intent, your inner vision, begin to draw the essence of that to you. So this earth energy flows up from above to your center. This divine essence flows down through you to your center. And as this earth energy, as this heavenly energy begin to blend, that spark, that center, that solar plexus or heart, wherever it may be within you, begins to radiate even brighter than you could have imagined, filling every cell and every organ of your body until that energy is so intense it begins to burst through your pores, filling the aura around your body and expanding the boundaries of that aura out into the world, out into the universe, like rays of a brilliant sun. You radiate this heavenly link. And I want you to think about all of the other people who are on this live stream, all of the other people who have been joining these classes. And imagine that that energy that you are sending out begins to link with them, forming a web of connectedness across space and time to those who are watching now or those who will watch in the future on replay, who take themselves through this process. We begin to link our energies, connecting our spirits, blending as we recognize that we are but one consciousness, expressing itself through individual people. And I want you to just sit in that energy of being linked together, feeling the power of the group dynamic, supporting each other, charging each other, sending love through those streams of intent, that we all may unfold for our best and highest good, that we may all heal at the level that we are ready, that we may unfold as Spirit sees fit for us, and knowing that even as we begin to bring ourselves out of this state, that we can tap into that collected, linked energy at any time we wish. Taking just a moment more to breathe in this amplified, linked energy. With your next breath, I want you to begin to bring your awareness back to you, back to where you're sitting. If you need to wiggle your fingers or toes to really anchor your awareness, you can go ahead and do so. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So, let me check and make sure that there weren't any other questions from last week. Okay. Hey, Chloe. Hey, Alessandra. So, I wanted to give you, I'm not going to say we're going to sort of take a break from the direction that we're going in. We're going to do a little sidestep, and then we're going to go back into more message work as we talk about next week being of service. But I wanted to talk mostly today about being an instrument for Spirit, and also sort of creating a deeper bond with our own Spirit team and our own Spirit helpers. So a lot of teachers, both in the US and in the UK, when they're teaching the development of mediumship, they use what's called the CERT system. That's starting to change a little bit. Some people see it as an outdated system. I do not. And basically, it kind of boils all of the steps that we've been taking periodically over the past several weeks and break them down into sort of a, was it an anagram, or where each letter sort of represents a step in the system. So usually what you'll see, and I know it's probably backwards in your screen, is CERT, C-E-R-T. And I'm going to make it a little bit different. I'm going to add one other step in front of it. So it might sound a little bit different, but I want you to remember desert or desert. So the first thing that we talked about in the beginning was really disconnecting from the personal mind. We talked about different ways to do that. And then after that, we worked a lot on identifying who our communicator is. So we disconnect from the personal mind, we shift our awareness to spirit, and then we become aware of a spirit communicator. And then after we have our spirit communicator, we really begin to work on evidence. And we did a whole class on evidence, what comprises evidence, what qualifies as evidence, and how sometimes evidence and the identification, or who the communicator is, the C and the CERT, can often be intertwined in one another. Last week, we talked a lot about the message, which is disconnecting the personal mind, communicator, evidence, the reason for coming, which is essentially the message. And we talked about how we sort of take messages from the evidence, how we just stay open. Part of your homework was to not only give evidential information, but then to shift into getting comfortable in attaining the message and the delivery of the message. So sort of the last portion of that formula, or the last portion of that equation, is the T, which stands for tie it up. And so when you're doing any sort of a spirit link, or when you're doing any sort of a spirit communication, like anything, like any story, because essentially what you're doing is you're telling the story of what this person has to say, their life, the things that they did, the things that they're doing, the things that they continue to do. Every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so oftentimes we talked about how you'll usually feel that you're coming to the end or the conclusion of your spirit link, because what will happen is you'll start to feel a shift in the energy, you'll start to feel the power drop, you'll start to feel sort of a fading quality as that person begins to step back, or that you are not able to sustain the link much longer. I would say that spirit's not able to sustain the link, but it's spirit can hold the link. When we can't, when that link starts to fade, it really has to do with us as a medium more than anything else. Less often it's the spirit world, unless it's maybe a soul who hasn't been over there very long. Communication through an instrument, which is what a medium is, what we're going to be talking about tonight, is sort of a new concept for them. Usually spirit, they can do what they need to do. It's us as the medium and the level of power that we've built that determines how long and how clear and how concise we hold that spirit link. So once you begin to feel that shift, where you know that from that point forward the connection is going to lessen, we need to begin to start to recap or tie up the communication. And normally how we do that is we sort of go through the evidence that we've given. And so if you're communicating with a grandma, and we've identified her and we've given evidence and she's given a message, then we'll start to feel that shift in energy. And so we just want to recap, because if we just say, when grandma's coming through and she's talking about, her red shoes and all of this, and she wants you to know that she's with you every time this song comes on the radio, when you were driving in the car recently and you were crying and that song came on, and she wants you to know that it was her, and then we just stopped, and then we're like, okay, moving on. It would almost feel like a dropped phone call, because that's what a spirit link is. It's a communication. It's sort of a phone call to the other side. And most people, unless you're rude, normally just don't hang up the phone when they're done. They say, goodbye, or hey, I'll talk to you later, whatever it may be. So when I start to feel that link shift or fade, or I know I'm not going to be able to sustain the link much longer, I'll go through the evidence again, and I'll say, and I'll usually communicate that I start to feel a shift. So the link is beginning to fade, but please just remember that this is your grandmother's way of coming through. Remember that she's talking about the red shoes and how proud she is of you. She's bringing up this particular picture. And again, she really just wants to confirm and let you know it truly was her that was with you when you were crying and this particular song came on the radio. And we want to just kind of tie it up in a neat little package so it feels like we've come to a conclusion, so it doesn't feel like that phone call dropped. Because if you think about it, the people that we physically lost are the people that we want to hear from most dearly than anybody else. And if we had a literal telephone where we could talk to them and we had a few precious minutes and it just cut off, that would be a not pleasant experience. And so we want to sort of bring sort of a resolution, kind of surmise everything that we've just said. If any sort of advices were given, we want to sort of reiterate those advices at the end and leave them with love in any way that we do. Now, there are some mediums who always say, and just know that they love you very much. Well, of course they love you very much, because they wouldn't be coming through in the first place if they didn't. That they're there because they love you and they care about you. And sometimes I will feel compelled to say, I really feel it's just immense love. Please know that she steps back, imparting this immense love to you, or whatever it may be. But I'm not the type to say they want you to know that they love you unless I actually hear or feel them express that. They express that in different ways. They might send them, show them roses, or give you the image or the impression or the feeling like you're trying to give them a hug, or some sort of a gesture that they used to do. Now there's an English medium by the name of Martin Twycross who's an excellent teacher, and one of the things that I actually learned from one of his courses was that sometimes a really great way to end a link is to end it in an evidential way. And so we talked about last week how we can often sort of take messages from the evidence, or how sometimes certain pieces of evidence are highlighted and we can sort of extrapolate and get into the message of that particular piece of evidence. So it's sort of twofold, or has a couple layers of meaning to it. Sometimes some mediums will hold a piece of evidence, usually a really good piece of evidence, and they'll save it to the very end, and they'll work it into the tying it up portion of that search system. And so say that Uncle Joe's coming through, and Uncle Joe loved chocolate ice cream. He had it all the time, and he gives you that image of an ice cream cone with these scoops of chocolate ice cream. And so the medium might get that in the beginning of the link, and they'll hold that to the end. And so they give all the other evidence, they give all the other messages, they're starting to tie it up, and then they may say, and I will leave you with your grandfather handing you a chocolate ice cream cone because he loved chocolate ice cream so much in life. And so know that every time you enjoy that chocolate ice cream, that his soul is with you. So it's kind of a neat way to bring it to a conclusion, but there's also sort of an evidential aspect to it. Does that make sense? So, being an instrument, as a medium, we are the middleman, we are the messenger, we're essentially an instrument. And so it's kind of interesting that we talk about the cycles of mediumship and taking care of ourselves, because if you think of the analogy of like a piano or a guitar, if you use it and you use it and you use it and you use it, eventually it's going to go out of tune. It needs care, like you as the instrument need care, needs attention, needs tuning, needs adjusting. And so we are an instrument for the spirit world. We're an instrument for the guides and helpers that work with us. And so one of the things that I want you to do as part of your homework for what we'll talk about next week, when we start talking about being of service and we start doing some more practices, some more linking practices and some more practice readings, and I'll kind of walk you through some of those. Some of those I'll have you do on your own. excuse me, is the next time that you are sitting for spirit, I want you to get a good link, a good guide link, bring them into your space, bring them into your vibration. Hopefully by now you're very familiar with your guide's energy, their signature, their calling card. And then I want you to think the thought towards them. How can I be the best instrument for spirit? Because we can have earthly teachers, we can have books, we can have audio classes, we can do all sorts of things. But we also need to take in account input from the spirit world. And so yes, we talked a lot too in the beginning about setting systems and putting them into place, and some work for us and some don't work for us, and some resonate with us and some resonate with our guides, and some don't resonate with us and some don't resonate with our guides. So ask them, how am I an instrument? What is being an instrument? How can I be a better instrument? And let them teach you how you are best in your message work, in your mediumship. Maybe they instruct you to take someone's hands. Maybe they tell you that this linking technique works better for you than one of the other linking techniques that we've practiced. Maybe they are encouraging you to explore inspirational or automatic writing. Maybe there's a certain meditation that they give you. Maybe there's a certain process that they give you. And you have to remember that it's going to be subtle. You're not going to get those booming voices unless you're extremely clairaudient. So if it's just an idea, you're just sitting there, you might get it in images and symbols and pictures, or you may get the strong feeling that you need to be doing something else. But it may often, too, come in the way of, okay, this is popping in as a thought, and I'm going to brush it off, but then later on that thought, even after I take myself out of sitting for spirit, that thought is returning and returning and returning and returning. That's your guides. And so even if it seems like something you just made up for yourself, or something, a memory is triggered, you read something in a book one time, you haven't thought about it for a long time, you sit for spirit, you ask how to be an instrument, and that book stands out in your mind, or that meditation, or that technique that you learned from this class, or that teacher, whatever, pops back up again. That's their way of saying, this isn't a technique, this is an approach that we want you to explore. And so that's part of your homework, which is asking spirit how you work best as an instrument, and how they want to work with you and through you as an instrument, and record what you perceive in whatever way that it comes through to you in your development journals, or hopefully the notes that you're keeping as you've been going through and we've been doing these classes. So this next practice that we're going to do is linked more with spirit guides. So we've talked about spirit guides, we've talked about, as we said, the systems and how they work with us, the mechanics of how they work with us as a medium, and the mechanics of how they sort of are involved in the process of getting a spirit link, a spirit contact, and a spirit communication. Part of helping you, so you've been getting used to this energy, and it's an energy that hopefully by now is familiar to you. What's going to help us begin to expand our awareness out to learning to discern other people's spirit energies is to start with other people's spirit guides. And so I'm going to take you through a process, and if you have, this is a partnered process, so if you have your partner with you, you're listening together, you can do it as we're going through. If not, I would just say wait till the live is over, go back, replay it, do it on your own time, and then take yourself through the practice, or take yourself through the process. So this is a two-part process. One is we're going to be starting to discern and see if we can recognize when another person's guide comes into their vibration. So that's the first part. And then the second part is going to be drawing that guide energy, or drawing what we perceive, or drawing our sensations as best as we can. And we'll talk a little bit more about that at the tail end of the process. So if you have a partner, or if you're going to do this later, what you need to do is you need to decide who is going to go first. And what I want you to do is I want you to get a chair, and the person who is going to be sensing their partner's guides is going to be standing. The person who is going to be bringing their guide in for their partner to sense is going to be sitting in the chair. So sitters in the chair, you put yourself in the chair and you just relax for a moment. And standers, I want you to stand directly behind the chair of your partner where they are sitting. And what I want you to do is standers, I want you to just lightly rest your hands on your sitter's shoulders. And sitters, I just want you to relax and just be very open. And so both of you can close your eyes and just take a few deep breaths. And then hopefully by now, you should have an idea of your perceptions, your senses, or which channels you receive your information through. Standers, I want you to just at first start to get a good psychic link with your sitter. And so I want you to just hold the intention of sensing into them, sensing into their energy, sensing into your sitter's vibration, their aura, and just asking yourself those questions if you need the prompt or if you're feeling stuck. What does this person feel like? If I could feel a color, what would it feel like? If this person was a temperature or a texture or had a smell or sound or taste or all of those different prompts that we've used in past exercises. Just try to get a good sense, however you do, but especially feeling, if you can, for what your partner feels like, what their baseline vibration feels like. And just mentally take note of what that feels like. Hopefully you're feeling it. And now, sitter, so the person in the chair, I want you to hold the intention of starting to bring your guide into your space in the way that we've practiced before. And hopefully you'll recognize that energy, you'll recognize them moving into your space, you'll recognize the calling card that hopefully you've learned to perceive with this particular guiding energy. And so hold the intention of starting to draw your guide close to you, while the standing person, I just want you to sense any changes that you feel in the energy of your sitter as they invite their guide into their vibration. Even if it's incredibly subtle, notice any shifts, any changes, any emotions. Is it a change in pressure or atmosphere? Does it feel brighter or dimmer? Do other colors come to mind? Do you feel a change in personality? Just notice every subtle nuance that you sense as your partner brings their guide into the energy. And now, standers, I want you to see if you can get a sense of your partner's guide. In the same way that you did it for yourself, can you feel an outside presence? Do you sense the presence of this guide? And I want you to really focus on feeling first, above anything else if you can. Do you get a sense of masculine energy or feminine energy? Does the energy have a speed to it? Put some analogies there. Is it slow? Is it excited? Is it serious? Is it joyous? Does it feel, as you feel in your own body, as you notice these shifts, maybe you feel physically different. Do you feel taller or shorter or thinner or thicker? Are there any smells or tastes that come into your awareness as you hold the intention of linking and blending your aura with the aura of your partner, with its guide linked into it? Let yourself perceive a sound, the first sound that comes to you, the first color that comes to you. If you don't perceive it, make yourself perceive it. Give yourself permission to make it up in the moment, and trust that the minute you hold the intention of talking to Spirit, everything you receive is from Spirit. Your perceptions are never wrong. Our interpretations may be, but our perceptions are never wrong. And now let yourself see any other visuals. Maybe you get an image, a place. If you see a face or a form, take note of it. But oftentimes that's not the case, and that's okay too. And I want you mentally now to ask that guide for a message for your partner, the sitter, and notice the first thoughts, feeling, or symbol that comes to you as that message. You can also perceive this by imagining that you're holding out your hand and letting that guide place an object in your hand. And that object is the message. What object does this guide hand to you for your sitter? Sitter, thank your guide and ask them to step back from your vibration. Begin to bring your awareness back to you. Standers, you can take a step back, figuratively and literally. Take a few breaths and begin to bring your awareness back to you. So, if you are listening to this on replay, obviously we went through it once. If you did it live, you'll have to wait till, afterwards and then go through the process again and switch. So the person who is standing before is now the sitter. The person who is the sitter is now the stander. And do the same thing. But if you just did the process instead of waiting for after, then I want you to make sure that you're writing down all your perceptions, even if they seem nonsensical, even if they were incredibly subtle, so you don't forget and you can share them with your partner later. But what I would really encourage you to do, so that in itself can be an exercise in itself, and it's great because it's teaching us to discern energies outside of our own guides, which is, a stepping stone on the path towards sensing other people's family and loved ones from the spirit world. We're getting used to thinking outside the box of ourself. And sometimes it can be very validating or confirming to another person if some of the things that you've picked up match some of their perceptions as well. But what it can be a really fun exercise if you have time, and what I want to sort of add on to your homework, in addition to asking Spirit how you are best an instrument for the spirit world and letting them teach you, is to practice, I guess in a way it's spirit art. Now, spirit art means different things to different people. Some people call themselves spirit artists. Some people call themselves psychic artists. That's not my talent. I don't know, maybe that's something I'll explore at a later date. It's also too ironic that usually if someone calls themselves a spirit artist, usually what they're drawing, even though it's inspired and coming from spirit, is usually symbolic, while oftentimes those who refer to themselves as psychic artists are like spirit portraiture artists who are drawing your loved ones that have passed over, or your spirit guides, but usually are very evidential in drawing your loved ones that have passed over. You'd think it would be the other way around, but some people just call themselves doing that they're a spirit portrait artist. That's another way of looking at it too. But in general, spirit art is any art that is inspired or influenced by spirit. And so if you have crayons and pens and pencils and paper, what I would like you to do is to try to capture and encapsulate as best you can a visual representation of the energy that you perceived on paper. Now, I don't want you to think that you have to draw the spirit guide as a figure, as a person, because oftentimes they don't really have bodies on the spirit side, not in a physical sense. They have spiritual bodies, but our guides don't often feel the need for that. Some people are very good at that, but even if you just perceived a guide as a color or shapes, or all you saw were symbols, then draw those colors and shapes and symbols and swirls or whatever it is. If there were words that stood out, you can write those words. If it was just feeling for you, well, then ask yourself, if this feeling had a color, if this feeling had a shape, if this feeling had a texture, what would it look like? And then try to draw a visual representation of the essence of that guide that you felt. And so one thing that I did was, when I knew that this was something that I wanted to have you guys practice, of getting, and especially too, this is going to help the more that we engage visual arts. It also increases our visual receptivity. I knew that I was going to ask you to do this, and I wasn't going to do it live, because then there would just be a big dull period while everyone was scribbling and coloring, and then interest would drop, and we want to keep that up if we're doing a class online. So about 20 to 30 minutes before we jumped on live, I did the practice that I'm asking you to do myself. And Brandy, let's see, Brandy, if you're on here. So I was thinking about an example of what I wanted you guys to do, and I was thinking about if there was a particular person who joined on a regular basis, who I was, whose energy I felt drawn to. And one person kept popping to mind, which was Brandy Hayes, who I don't know if she's in here or not. If you're in here, Brandy, just give me a thumbs up, or hopefully I'll tag you later so you can see the portrait that I did for you. Again, don't feel compelled to draw figures or faces. The energy of a guide can be perceived or expressed in any way that you do, or in any way that you can. But so I was thinking about Brandy, and I was asking just for kind of a link for a guide for her. And so this was just like a quick little sketch to capture the essence of what I saw for Brandy. So Brandy, whenever you see this, shoot me a message, and I'll share with you some of my perceptions of the energy for you. Plus, it's just a neat little physical touchstone for people to have. So again, you do not have to feel compelled to draw faces and figures. Although, for those of you who are actually good at faces and figures, or even if you aren't, if spirit art is something that interests you, it is something that you can sit to develop. You can ask for a guide, or if it's an interest that you have or something that you're meant to do, you may actually already have a guide with you, probably an artist from the spirit world who will influence you. So some people might say, I'm not good at drawing. Well, you don't need to be, because spirit will develop that gift with you. And like anything, we have to be willing to be shitty at it at first for it to improve. But the more that we know that guide and blend with that guide and learn to surrender to the process, the more influence that they can have on whatever artistic skills that you're working with. So part of your homework, you're sitting, you are asking spirit how to be an instrument, and then you're also doing that guide sensing energy exercise with a partner. And then if you want to take it the extra step, draw what you see, draw what you perceived, and draw what you experienced, so you guys can exchange pictures, so you have some spirit art to have for each other. I'm going to go back through here and check and see if there's anything that was missed. Spirit artist from the artist on Lilydale this summer. Alessandra, I'm wondering if you're thinking of Joe Scheel, a very good evidential spirit artist. Is there spirit art like aura photography? So to me, that would be more psychic, like psychic art. Drawing the aura. There are some people who draw the aura or draw the energy or draw the chakras. Some people do guide portraiture. And as I've said, I'm not a spirit artist by any stretch of the imagination, and so for me to feel, I don't want to say to feel confident, because I think we're all in this place where people are just learning at their various stages of development if they're here on this live stream, but for me, like, I've gotten spirit portraits in the past that I've really resonated with, and I've gotten some where it's like, this is a beautiful piece of art, but I don't feel a connection, or this doesn't feel like a guide that I know. And maybe it's that it isn't at this time, or maybe it's just that, maybe that person really wasn't linked into me. So I think so. If you are wanting to discover a guide through spirit art as a practice, this is great. But if it's something that you really wanted to know, like you know more concretely, then you might want to find someone like Joe, who does evidential spirit art. Because if they are evidential enough that they can draw your loved ones that they've never met before that have passed away, then I would feel a little bit more comfortable putting stock in a guide that they drew, because we can't confirm guides like we can validate guides with evidence. So, Joe, that's right, yep. Let's see here. There was another little practice that I was going to do, but I think I'll save it and work it into next week. That's all that I actually have for you tonight. It was fairly short. Well, there were several chapters, but I felt like some of what the particular author of the book that we're using as a guideline was a little bit redundant, so I just sort of boiled it down to what I thought was necessary and practical, because I didn't feel like beating a dead horse, and I know that you guys don't want to beat a dead horse, you want to progress. So that's really all that was in there for now, and I think that's enough for you to work on, at least for the week until we meet again. Before I get off of here for the evening, do you guys have any other questions for me? And normally too, obviously if you're doing the guide art or the spirit art as a practice, you're giving each other permission. Normally I would not just try to attempt to tune in or connect with someone else's guide without their permission or without being in a session. It's just an ethics thing. However, I know Brandy, she's been a client, and I know that she doesn't care. She's very open to that. How often can your guides change? I don't know that there's a concrete answer for that, Jill. Some people say that your guides never change. I'm not one of those people. I will say that when I feel like there are times where I feel a different energy come in, and usually I will get a sense that it's to help me with a particular thing. And it's not as if the guides that I'm familiar with step out. It's just a new energy step in, and those are usually very short, temporary things where they're just coming in to help with a specific thing, and then they might be there for a day, a week, a month, and then that's an energy that kind of goes on. As far as the guides that work with us on a more personal level, I generally find that it's not often that they shift. It's usually after we've had after we've had significant time periods of doing what we do, significant time periods of growth where there's a change. The way that it's always taken place in my life is that, and maybe it's happened twice in, I started when I was 16, I'm 30, so almost 15 years. Maybe twice where I can definitely say, okay, there was a massive guide change, because I've never experienced it as one or two step out, couple two step in. It's always like, I go into this space where I just sort of feel horribly shut down for a couple days, and I start back up again, and as I get my feet back underneath me, I kind of feel like the energies that are working with me are totally different. So it feels like a complete stepping in, stepping out kind of a thing, which is very uncomfortable when it happens. Thankfully, for me personally, it's only been maybe like once every 5 to 7 years or longer. Maybe for you it's different. Maybe your guides never will change. So I don't know that we can put like a distinct, Period on that. However, to kind of address what Elizabeth just mentioned, I don't know that our guides truly ever leave us. For example, the guide that I primarily work with now is not the first guide that I connected with as a teenager who primarily worked with me in my readings. And I used to it was kind of sad because I was like, oh, she's gone. And one, we really don't need to be like super attached to our guides and helpers. It's great to know who they are. We're in a partnership. It's a work relationship. They love us, but but they're not there to chit chat, and we're not there. It's not. They're not our pets. We can't put our earthly attachments on them. And that being said, I kind of feel like she didn't go anywhere per se. She might not be working with me on the forefronts. A different guide is better suited to where I'm at now. I kind of feel like they just sort of stepped back. So I know I've used in the past the analogy of Canadian geese who fly in a V formation, where one is at the front, and then as that one needs to pull back, a new one steps forward. That's, I guess, better suited. I don't know. I've never been a goose, to lead that V formation. So sometimes I think it's not as much about guides leaving or coming or going. It's about who we are most resonating with on our team at the moment. Holly talks about pendulums. The thing that you have to remember, I can't see the entirety of your question, so I apologize. The thing that you have to remember is that, like all psychic or mediumistic information, feedback from the pendulum is coming through your own subconscious. It's not spirit that's moving the pendulum. They might be giving you the thoughts that give you the answers, but it's minute muscle movements that are dictated by the subconscious mind that are influencing the swing of the pendulum. And so if you aren't in a clear space, or if you have preconceived ideas or notions or conflicting thoughts within yourself, you're going to get conflicting answers. So the less of an agenda that you have, or the more clear your mind is when you use that, the better your answers are going to be. I personally don't use a pendulum for very much or very often, and I think that you will have probably more realistic experiences the more that you sit for spirit, the more that you know yourself, and the more that you just focus on your raw perceptions and less relying on tools. Tools can be helpful in certain scenarios, but more often than not, tools become crutches, or in instances like the pendulum, we tend to put power in the tool when a pendulum has no power whatsoever. It is just an extension of you and what you know, even if you don't know what you know. It helps us to know what our higher self knows that consciously we may not. Any other questions, you guys? Just gonna make sure I didn't miss anything. Holly, you're very, very welcome. So you guys, do your homework. Ask sitting for spirit. Continue sitting for spirit. Always continue sitting for spirit. Ask spirit how you are best to be an instrument and get some insight for yourself that way. And then do the guide sensing practice. And if you want to go the extra mile, do the art practice. And then hopefully that'll give us some good questions and troubleshooting stuff to start off with for next week. Next week, we will be talking more about the process of being a messenger, more of the subtleties of message work, being of service, and Elizabeth, where did you learn most of what you know and teach about? Various sources. I've had personal teachers, one being Gail St. John, the other being Lilydale medium Sharon Klingler, but I've done classes and courses everywhere, in person, online, Lilydale, at Camp Chesterfield, friends, books, courses, colleagues, and I take all of it into consideration, and I kind of mix it up, and I tweak it, and I kind of try to put my own spin on it, and I find the aspects that resonate with me. And then I'm the type of person, I'm a nuts and bolts type of person, so I like to boil things down to the nuts and bolts and get rid of all the flowery shit, because the flowery shit's nice and it sounds good, but it doesn't help anybody. And then I put my, like I said, it goes through my Capricorn filter, and then I arrange it or try to organize it in a way that makes sense to me to teach to you. So I don't know that I could say that one source dominates any other. All right, you guys, do your homework and enjoy the rest of your week. And I will talk to you next Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern. And I was trying to think. Oh, for those of you too, again, I do have my March Intro to Mediumship in-person intensive coming up. If you're interested in that, if you do prepay by March 9th, it's $25 off the total cost of the course. So you can always just shoot me a message to register for that as well. So I will talk to you guys. Hey, Carl, thank you. So I will talk to you guys next week, and in the meantime, do your homework.